no one person should be responsible for everything.
Hello and welcome to episode 4, season 1 of your Cyber Threat Intelligence podcast. Whether you're a seasoned CTI expert, a cybersecurity professional, or simply curious about the digital battlefield, our expert guests and hosts will break down complex topics into actionable insights. On this episode of season 1, our host Pedro Kertzman will chat with Cherie Burgett. She has worked with the Mining and Metals ISAC since its inception. As the Director of Cyber Intelligence Operations, Cherie is responsible for researching and analyzing the ever-changing threat landscape affecting the mining and metals sectors. With a unique philosophy and approach to cyber threat intelligence incorporating lessons learned from studies in the arts and humanities, she provides a nuanced perspective on the ethics and human condition relating to threat actor groups and the people defending our critical infrastructure. Over to you, Pedro.
Cherie, thanks a lot for coming to the show. It's great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about your story, your career journey up until your current role?
Sure. It's actually, I think, kind of unique. I guess about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, I went to DEF CON just for fun. Um, so before that, I was a gamer. I really like playing video games, played a whole lot of MMOs. Um, I did a whole lot of volunteer work for the military. I was an FRG leader. I did a whole lot of community building, and I hadn't had a paying job in 15 years. When I just decided to go to DEF CON for the first time. My last paying job before this was working at a Radio Shack. So, dating myself a little bit, but I worked at Radio Shack when it was still kind of cool. Um, I I'm pretty sure I had an A+ certification out of working for Radio Shack, but I was really good at helping people solve their problems, and I love the people that came into the store.
Awesome.
So that's kind of my background in a nutshell. And then I went to DEF CON just for fun. It was basically my escape from my real life. It was the thing I wanted to do for fun. So that was kind of my once a year week vacation away from the family. I went to DEF CON and had fun. And because I went to DEF CON a few years in a row and was talking to the same people,
Hmm.
it actually led to some mentoring, and I got serious about wanting to join this industry. So it was sort of
Hmm.
late in life. And then uh, someone I met at DEF CON was creating an ISAC and for an industry that didn't have one, and
Okay.
which is the mining
Okay.
mining and metal sector. They currently didn't have one. They had a series of cyber attacks, and the only by the same threat actor, and the only way that that happens is by not sharing information.
Hmm.
And when he pitched the ISAC to me, I'm like, well, what can I do to help with that? I have no experience in this. But he's like, actually, you do, because you know how to get people together and collaborate and solve problems. You have this experience. You're technical enough because, your gaming experience. You can do this.
Hmm.
You just, and so I was brought in as a security program manager, and I helped develop the program that is the threat intelligence sharing program that we have today.
That's
So
awesome.
that's basically how I got in. It was what I saw is a vacation and fun time, people actually do for a living. So,
Yeah, that's a
and
really
sometimes
unique.
the thing
Yeah.
that you do when you're procrastinating with your life is the thing you should actually be doing with your life. So,
Yeah, yeah. They say, do something you love and don't work a
yep.
single day in your life or something like that,
I
right?
I absolutely agree with that. That's
Yeah.
it doesn't always feel like work, and there's some things that you can turn your hobbies into work and then it becomes work. But this is something that I actually really enjoy. Really got into threat intelligence through this.
I feel you. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing your story with us. And you mentioned something about collaboration, right? I think it's so important within our sub part of the industry, if you will. Would you mind expanding a little bit more on that, please?
So basically what I do is because no one person should be responsible for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the industry that, I am, saddled with the responsibility of building this whole threat landscape didn't actually have a picture to begin with. And
Hmm.
so the only way that you can do that is by, building relationships with people in that sector, in that industry, so that we can
Hmm.
share intelligence with each other. And you can only do that by going to places, going to the conferences, going and talking to people and meeting them face to face,
Hmm.
because there's a whole lot of trust that's involved in sharing information that becomes intelligence.
Hmm.
Uh, People, uh, we have a security culture and
Hmm.
a privacy culture that we're used to dealing with. And when we're talking about, we want to keep a lot of these things secret. But when we're talking about bad guys, the criminals that want to do us harm, we cut ourselves off from the ability to crowdsource
Hmm.
um, the collaborative defense. Because if we're only seeing one part of the picture, then maybe somebody else actually sees more of it, and we can and maybe we know experts that have like a special niche that could actually help solve that problem. And so that's basically what I do is I help link up people with people that can help solve the problems.
And you mentioned about ISAC. Would you mind sharing with the folks listening, if they are not 100% sure, what it is, the role they play within the CTI industry?
So an ISAC is an information sharing analysis center. You can also, there are also organizations that are called ISOWs, where it's an information sharing organization. Basically, the two are the same, depending on what acronym they chose to use.
Hmm.
Every sector has an ISAC, and that if you're new to a certain sector, you just started, you're responsible for a team in a company. If you never worked in, say, mining, metals, or the water industry, the first step that you should be doing is reaching out to that sector's ISAC because they have people that are experts at what they do. They have people that have been working in that sector for years, and there's a shared knowledge that you can get by joining that ISAC.
What kind of collaboration you have? Is it threat feeds, data feeds, reports, meetings?
Um, a lot. Yes, all of the above. So what we do is we have a newsletter that goes out. We have a threat intelligence platform that we share articles and indicators of compromise through. Those are like IP addresses and hash values at the very, lowest level of what we share.
Hmm.
But what we really like to share is the finished intelligence. So those are the things that we put it all together. It's analyzed, and we tell you why this is important for your business to pay attention to.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. How do you call them? Like associates, customers for the ISAC,
So
members,
we call our members members,
members.
and we're very particular about what we use.
Hmm.
We don't like calling them clients or customers
Hmm.
because we want it to be more of a collaborative organization where the member has ownership of the organization. And so, if you don't like your ISAC, you as a member should be able to do something to change it or improve it. And so, the ISAC is only as good as its members.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's super interesting. And talking with all those folks from different geographies, I would guess, levels of experience, any like type of skills or skill sets that you see that are super valuable for people within the CTI industry?
So I think one of the ways that you can tell if someone is actually really good at CTI is how well they research things. Like if they are someone that is the person that wants to know everything about a product or a person, and they can dig up information that you didn't know existed on them, they're probably good at CTI.
Yeah, they're curious by nature.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I think uh, like you all know that person that is better than the FBI detective at figuring out, what everybody is up to. They're probably decent at CTI because they know how to Google. Um, there's a lot of a lot of the tools that I use are just search engine tools, because you're looking at the open web, and you're looking at the dark web, and you're looking at what's available in your threat intelligence platform, and you're looking to feed that. And so basically the internet is your whole playground.
Yeah, there's a, it's one of those people that it won't rest. They won't rest until they get to the very bottom of that
They want to
topic.
solve the puzzle.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
if you like solving puzzles, but then again, you also have to kind of keep an open mind,
Hmm.
like, because you can intentionally add bias. And so if you have this idea in your head that it must be the Russians, and so everything that you dig up about them is like, oh, this also leads back to the Russians, and you're convinced that it's the Russians, and it's because you've already created that bias. But if you have an open mind and you let the data speak for itself, when you
Hmm.
do the analysis, then you can say, oh, actually, if I didn't see that this one thing, was different, this outlying, instance, I would have believed that. And so it's being able to keep that open mind when you're doing the actual analysis portion of the CTI.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially because the sometimes super clever threat actors, they can try actually to make you believe that they are somebody else or another
So
group.
I think a very good example of this is the use of AI now.
Hmm.
And because we have really awesome AI tools that can even change your accent in real time, someone can call in and have a North American accent, and call center use these all the time. Now, sometimes you pick up the phone, you think you're talking to a robot. It's actually a human with AI altering.
Hmm.
Um, AI accent softening software
Okay.
that they're using. And if they're using the software and it's not tuned correctly, it can sound robotic. But if it is tuned well, their accent will be like a very natural sounding accent.
Oh wow.
And so uh, the it makes attribution to the types of threat actors that you're dealing with even harder, because they are able to, it's not just VPNs that they're using to change
Hmm.
um, and their IP addresses. Now they can actually change their voice, and
Wow.
that's cool and interesting, and also makes our jobs harder.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Honestly, I didn't know about these ones. I think I should try those to see if it alleviates my accent a little bit, or I don't get too bored with my own voice.
Absolutely, you can try them. They're uh, on all of their websites that I've seen. There's you're supposed to only use it for ethical reasons. Like, there's a
Oh,
code of ethics,
yep.
but threat actors
Oh my goodness.
won't
Yeah.
pay attention to that.
Maybe they don't read it. Yeah.
Their code of ethics is their own.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's good to know. Yeah, attribution is probably one of the most complicated parts on this whole like threat research CTI, because it's sometimes, if they're really good on obfuscating the original, if they have a massive botnet between the real guys triggering stuff and the end user or client or host being attacked or victims, it's really hard to pinpoint who this
And
is coming from.
yeah, and also the threat actors are kind of specializing
Mm-hmm.
in what they do. And so maybe their specialization is in initial access,
Mm-hmm.
and then they sell that access to another group that will install the malware or do the exfiltration,
Mm-hmm.
or because they have their supply chain already established.
Mm-hmm.
It's its own business model. And so if you only have the indicators for the ransomware, you don't have the you don't have the initial access.
That's right.
uh, that- and so that's why I think collaborating and seeing what other people are seeing and their behaviors, and being able to put that whole picture together is so important, because their ecosystem is much more complex than it used to be. It used to be one threat actor that would, get in and do the job, but now It's they have their own supply chain.
Yeah, yeah, they used to do the whole thing start to finish, and now they just need to specialize in one little
Hmm.
part of the equation. I remember some college students asking me some time ago, with the proper cybersecurity knowledge, how damaging could you be to a company? They were asking me that, and I'm like, even if I didn't have as much knowledge, because you can basically buy most of that
Hmm.
stuff out there. Uh,
Yeah.
initial access brokers, info stealers, ransomware packages, and all that. It's. I mean, you need to know how to manipulate, not to ransomware yourself, I guess. But it's
Well,
just the barrier is just lower, way lower right now.
if you wanted to set up a ransomware operation right now, you could,
Mm-hmm.
and with very little, like it takes a lot more skills to defend than it does to attack.
Mm-hmm.
It takes, because they even have customer support, and they'll,
Yes.
step by step instructions, and
It's
like,
insane, right?
if only cybersecurity was this easy.
If funny for exactly the same students I mentioned about the customer service, and they were like dying laughing, thinking I was joking. I'm serious. Unfortunately, they do have it. They do have it. I remember I think it was Children's Hospital in Toronto, Canada.
Hmm.
They got ransomware a few years ago, and because of the hash, everybody was jumping on attribution that particular threat actor, but it was actually one of their customers from the ransomware as a service offering. They had that send a package to the children's hospital, and because of the hashes and all that, people quote unquote started publishing articles about how those guys would be able to target like a children's hospital, and they came publicly saying, no, we don't do children's hospital, wait up. And then they found out, oh, it's one of our
Affiliates.
customers, so here's the decryption key, so you can but up until that point, I don't remember how many days uh, that they were really in trouble in the hospital. So I guess even
Yeah.
some bad guys might have some lines they don't cross, I
There,
guess.
there is some people don't have lines they cross. It depends on
Oh
which
yeah.
country you're coming, the attack is coming from. There are some countries that absolutely hate certain countries,
Yeah.
and so there's nothing off limits. But for some of these ransomware as a service, providers, they actually do kind of have like a code of conduct. We don't do this, and they have their affiliates agree to that. And sometimes, depending on the affiliate or the script kiddie, they might not even know who they're ransoming. They they just happen to have access that they bought to something, and they didn't know what it was because they didn't bother to do the who as lookup on them.
Yeah.
Like, you,
Yeah.
you know like, you should probably know who you're attacking, but sometimes, like, they're not all great. They don't all possess the technical skills, or they just kind of wanted to make a quick buck.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, what about we? I think we have given a fair amount of background information to everybody at this point, and super important the skill you mentioned, right? The curiosity for people in the industry. And what about overall for practitioners or CTI teams? Any do's and don'ts that are top of mind, kind of thing?
I have a few,
Mm-hmm.
and some things I'm actually pretty passionate about. But I think the most important thing to remember is, what you're doing and why. And so it is your job to get the most relevant and actionable information into the hands that need them, and in the method that is most, that they can use it. And so sometimes when I get on some of these sharing calls with different organizations, and they it kind of goes into what some people refer to as story time, where they're basically just reading off headlines and uh, and not saying anything about the headlines, about why they think it might be important or why they should pay attention to it, or they're reading worse CVE lists, and the CVE lists are the ones that I think are just kind of ridiculous to share on a phone call, because you can't do anything with that information like just by hearing it. You don't. It's not the best way to share that information. An email or a tip would be better. Something that but your job as a CTI analyst is to actually analyze. Like, it's not just to share pass forward information. You have to be able to decide whether or not it's information worth sharing to that person and that they can use it. And you can throw everything you want into your tip.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's there for. You can have that as a catch-all. But what
Mm-hmm.
you're actually sharing out to the people, your team, the executives, you want to make sure it's tailored for them and they know exactly what to do with that information.
Actionable. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think it also brings the don'ts as well. Like, just don't go on a start time mode, I guess.
Well, so I think sometimes we get way too focused on the granular,
Mm-hmm.
the the CVEs, the IOCs, mapping it to the attack framework.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just so much more because I think a lot of that work can be automated.
Mm-hmm.
You can have AI scrape a lot of that information and they can sort that for you. That's not real analysis work. I think the real
Mm-hmm.
analysis work is figuring out why this is important and what we can do about it. And so I think that's the real analysis is um, I've kind of made a rule that I don't share anything with anyone unless I can tell them why I'm sharing it with them,
Mm-hmm.
why this is important, and I will put that reason right up at the top of the page, and and that's how I share things. And because what it does is it forces me to make sure that what I'm sharing with them is actionable, is important, and they know why it's important.
Oh, that's great insight. Thank you. Anything that you know today that you wish you knew back in the early DEF CON years that is super either knowledge or skill that you have now that you wish you knew that back in the day?
So this is very general for cybersecurity, I think, is I wish I knew that I belonged to this industry back then. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because, and I think that was the hardest thing for me to learn was that my skills were actually valuable, that I was good at what I did. Um, and, uh, and it was because, of, uh, I think a lot of people discount their life skills as as actual skills that are useful in this industry, especially since we're like hacker culture. you know Things that you do in life, like hacker is more of a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lifestyle.
100%.
They're the people that kind of bend the rules, or they when they get a shiny new game, uh, they look for ways to break it,
Mm-hmm.
or they look for ways to turn off the guardrails, or they look for the cheat codes. That's kind of hacker mentality, and your life skills that you know I went through a brief time where I was extreme couponing because to me those were exploits in real life. Like just it's the lifestyle, and I think a lot more people belong to this life than actually realize. And I think the gatekeeping that we have in this industry is kind of a shame, because there are so many people that I think would do such have an amazing impact, but they don't quite feel like they belong because they didn't join, or they didn't join the traditional way,
Yeah.
or they didn't start out as a SOC analyst to
Mm-hmm.
they didn't start out with the the pen testing technical roles that people think that they need before joining this industry. One of the surprising things that I find, that people that work at CTIR, is that when I meet them in person, whether it doesn't matter what background they came from, they think like me. Like I'm always shocked and blown away that they have shared interests because we didn't have this club that kind of all got together and predetermined what cyber threat intelligence was, uh, the person that kind of works in cyber threat intelligence was going to be like. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you noticed as a podcast host, but we share similar traits,
Oh
and
yeah.
that always like surprises me, the people that work in it, because we don't interact with each other a whole lot.
That's right. And funny you mentioned that, and probably because we are already uh, entirely on the CTI industry, or surrounded by it, or part of it. The curiosity that you mentioned, it's really common. Uh,
Yeah, I think so we are the people that get excited when we see a torch network. uh,
yeah.
Like I don't know. It's sort of like I'm not sure the right word for that, but there's definitely a trait where we see some, we don't mind seeing a little bit of destruction, and we kind of like, ooh, what's that? It's like driving by a fire, and we're the
Hmm.
one who wants to see how, we want to know how it started.
Yeah.
Um,
Or the pattern.
yeah, we're curious about we're curious about the destruction that just happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can take some teachings out of any single episode, good or bad, out there.
Hmm.
If it's bad, maybe the learnings you can get, it's avoiding the next one, and probably that's the most important thing about
Well,
CTI.
you're exactly right. I really think it's about preventing the next one from happening and learning from our mistakes, or learning why it was, why it happened. Maybe we can uh, course correct, or put a little bit of mitigation into it, or write a new playbook that is specific to this thing, so that if it happens again to another company, then they already have the playbook written for them. They know how to respond to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think at this point, if people had the opportunity to listen all the past episodes, they will see that so many different backgrounds and everybody is doing, I would say, really well within the CTI industry. And the most importantly to me is adding a lot of value to their teams and their, you name it, members, customers, partners. And that's, I think, it's so important, especially life skills in general. Uh, Writing, like one very specific part of the CTI role or teams will always be writing reports. If you only have across your team the best malware researchers, reverse engineers, so on, people only focused on numbers, who's gonna write that report? So you have to, as a CTI leader, I think you should pay attention to this multiple skill sets that you're gonna need to have a winning team.
Yeah, definitely the verbal and written communication are key, because it's it it being able to put your, analysis into words and explain to people why they need to do something, is the whole uh, is the whole reason for CTI in the first place, is so that they can make decisions, so that they can know what might be coming, so that they can, if your information that you're sharing with them is not having any kind of impact on the role, or their decisions that are being made, then you're doing it wrong. You're not sharing the right information, or you're sharing it in a way that's not consumable for them. So you have to change that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned right the reasoning why you're sharing that. It's so having that in mind all the time is super important to
Hmm.
um,
Um,
decide what to share, how to.
yeah, one of the things that kind of in my background, so from before all of this, in a past life, I actually went to Bible college. Um, and so one of the things that you learn in Bible college is hermeneutics, which is the art of interpretation,
Mm.
which is something that I recently connected to how I actually analyze written text is by using these interpretation techniques. And so that's one of the things that I'm actually working on um, writing more about so that more people can, oh, maybe, maybe, maybe someone who in a past life did, study theology. Maybe there is a path for them to work in
Oh,
cybersecurity.
wow.
Maybe someone who is into philosophy or psychology or even the arts,
Mm-hmm.
I think are all things that can be used. Threat intelligence to me is the most human of the cyber disciplines. And so I think bringing a lot of the humanities into it because we're dealing with people, we're communicating with people, we're working with people. We're not protecting systems, we're protecting people, and so that they have safe operations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what, and we're protecting them against people. And I know even with AI, it's still person versus person. Just because you have software in the middle doesn't make it any less.
Yeah, I like the we're protecting people instead of systems. That's really nice because it makes a lot of sense. It's a very good way to put it. And what about your knowledge about CTI? Not data feeds and things like that, but how you update your knowledge across things happening across the CTI industry. Any specific blog, book, podcast you like to use to sharpen your knowledge?
So I'm constantly in, the CTR intelligence feeds and reading articles. I subscribe to a few that I constantly read, the general ones like Bleeping Computer and the
Mm-hmm.
Hacker News.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually fairly current. They don't have a whole lot of content that is specifically mining focused.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the intelligence that I get is through our members. But I would recommend to someone who is new to CTI is to start following some of the cybersecurity blogs. And there's an interesting one that's actually a Russian site that I like to go to that's it has ransomware notes and samples of those because I like to see how the notes are being crafted. And I read ransom notes for fun, so some other people might actually do that too. But I like to see how they are threatening, what kind of psychological tactics that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would just recommend having a list, bookmarking them, and maybe coming up with like a sample question for like a sample business, like, and just sort of practice answering those questions. Like, and you can actually have AI come up with some of those questions. A lot of people in CTI actually use AI now to what's a good question to come up with uh, for this specific instance, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll come up with some questions, and then you can practice answering those questions. And if you find anything cool or interesting, what you can also do is share it. And you can do all of this without having any CTI background whatsoever, without needing to get the job first. And you can actually just share your passion for cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence with the world on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And that may get you noticed as, someone who's passionate about cybersecurity and CTI. And I don't know a CISO in the world that would pass up the opportunity to have somebody work for their team that would actually do it for free on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
there's your path to getting, noticed, is to come up with some sample questions and answer them and share them on LinkedIn.
No, that's a great advice. Yeah, nice. And still about like sharing or collaboration. If anybody happens to be listening to podcasts and happens to work on the mining industry, that is not 100% sure how they should first get in touch with ISAC, what's best way to
So,
do so.
so you can look up all the ISACs, whether it's water or health or mining. You can just Google it.
Okay.
But our website is mmisac.org, and most ISACs will have a similar naming convention. They will usually be either a .org or a .com. Just look up your industry's ISAC, and they should have a contact page, and contact us. But definitely reach out to your ISAC. They are your best resource for people who are in that sector
Hmm.
that have probably already solved the problems that you're trying to solve.
Yep. Awesome. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't need to put ourselves at any more disadvantages than we're already at. We're already on the short end of the stick being defenders. We don't need to create more walls, and create more silos, and create another paywall for intelligence that should be free. And that's a bit of a rant. But and there are there are companies that are monetizing cyber threat intelligence for open source stuff that I think should just be free. Um,
Yeah.
which is to me is crazy. If it starts out with traffic light protocol clear, it should stay clear. Like there's no reason to paywall that.
Awesome. And what if people wants to learn more from you, follow you, articles, blog posts, LinkedIn, you name it? How they do that?
So some of my articles are actually published on the MMISAC webpage, and you can go to mmisac.org and read them there. We also have a monthly newsletter that is available for everyone. Whether you are part of the mining sector or not, you can sign up, and you can sign up through that page. And we also have, or I also share regularly on LinkedIn, posts and articles that I publish, and those are all available. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm usually not super particular about who connects to me. If I see that you are actually a human being that works in cybersecurity, odds are I will accept your request.
Awesome. Cherie, thank you so very much. It was great having you here. Super insightful conversation. And I hope I'll see you around.
I definitely hope to see you around. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Got thoughts or questions? Connect with us on our LinkedIn group, Cyber Threat Intelligence Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone with CTI expertise that would like to be interviewed in the show, just let us know. Until next time, stay sharp and stay secure.